Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Totalbiscuit of CynicalBrit.com and the YouTube channel Total Halibut, and we're here to look at something that might confuse you just a little bit, at least on the initial principle and the idea of it. So, what about an MMO that was based around crafting? Well, it looks like Seatribe has got a few ideas in their heads in that regard. It goes by the name of Salem. We've got two guys from Seatribe to show us this. Welcome to the show.
I'm Fredrik Tolf.
Thank you, thank you. I'm Björn Johannesson. I'm the creative director of Seatribe, and Fredrik is my programming lead.
Björn Johannesson might actually be the manliest name I've heard all day, so congratulations on that one. You win the prize.
All right, sweet.
Now, Salem. So, Seatribe has produced one game before, goes by the name of Haven and Hearth.
Correct.
And now you're going right into the MMO space with something a little bit unusual. So, how does a crafting MMO work?
A crafting MMO works along the principles of a completely free and open sandbox mutable world in which players can explore, and in which they can find resources to craft things from, quite simply.
Okay, so it gives me a little bit of a Minecrafty vibe in that regard.
Yeah, I think we've heard Minecraft mentioned a lot.
Yes, I can't imagine that you wouldn't have. Anything
Exactly.
Has it got resource gathering, crafting? It's Minecraft. Well,
no.
as we know that it is not, but the whole resource gathering and crafting, it's kind of becoming its own genre at the moment.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, it's a genre that I personally love and enjoy. So
it sucks people's lives away. It's kind of changing.
Yeah, and because it's much more meaningful than many other types of gameplay. You can actually change the world that you play in, which is awesome in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So let's have a look at the game and let's find out exactly how it works. So why don't you walk us through it?
All right, absolutely. The game is set in colonial New England sometime during the time of the 13 colonies, and the players will be taking the roles of kind of intrepid colonists from the old world traveling into the new world to kind of make a life for themselves. And obviously the game has several of the standard features of any RPG in that you can have various types of gear, various types of clothing, and various ways to customize and personalize your own character and decide how you want to look and how you want your character to look. And the gear obviously fills the same function that it would in most any MMO, in that it gives you stat buffs. It is useful for, some of it is tools that you need to craft things, and like axes, for example, for chopping down trees and stuff like that. As we walk through the world that we see around us here is either random generated when we kind of seeded the world originally, or alternatively built by players. So the stone paths here would, for example, be player made. The church that we saw earlier would also be player-made, and these trees and the rest of the environment would be random generated. And we're looking ultimately to provide a world here that's going to be a couple of square kilometers at least in size.
Okay. Yep.
With each kind of tile here representing about 1 square meter. So it's going to be a pretty massive world, and it's obviously going to be chock full of natural resources in forms of clay, lumber, iron, iron ore, various kinds of herbs that you can forage and use to craft and build up your little settlement as best as you can. Okay.
You were saying about the size of the world there. How many players do you expect kind of to be in a world of that size? How does the MMO part of this work?
We don't really know yet what our limits are in terms of how many players we could ultimately support. We know that we can support at least 1,500 players because we've seen at least that on Haven previously. Yep. So we know the architecture holds up for at least that much. But eventually, if we do reach a point where our architecture can't cope with all players on one server anymore, we hope to launch new servers and allow free travel between them.
Okay.
So as to kind of keep, and then obviously those other servers representing sort of other colonies that the players can also travel to.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
And yeah, the world is again entirely open, and obviously since it being an RPG, we obviously have several other aspects that are familiar from most any RPG, character stats not the least of which are. And here we have the main 4 character statistics that the player has. And these are his 4 cardinal humors.
Right, okay.
Indeed.
Yeah, that's a little bit clever for some people.
It's based on like ancient Greek medical theory.
Indeed. Yep, I remember those.
Yeah, dating back to like Hippocrates. And it was obviously the state of the art in the 16th, 17th century.
Yeah.
So in clockwise order, we have here blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile.
Yeah.
And blood is essentially your health meter, like when you're dealt damage, when someone throws a punch at you, when you're dealt damage, quite simply, you lose some blood.
Okay.
Phlegm is more of a stamina type resource that you use when you like chop trees or craft things or stuff like that. Yellow bile is used mostly during combat, when throwing punches and when dodging and when like engaging defensive stances and maneuvers.
Okay.
And black bile ultimately is the intellectual resource that you use when you acquire new skills.
Okay.
You expend this resource over time in order to acquire new skills.
Right. Okay.
And the obviously you will be replenishing these resources as you move through the game and as you do things, and you replenish them then by eating food, which is why food is going to be hugely important to your character. Because he basically needs it to do anything at all.
Okay, yeah, and I assume that the ability to perhaps cook more complex foods will be in the game as
well.
Yeah,
absolutely. Okay. Which is what a lot of the crafting tree is going to be geared towards. Is like more and more advanced forms of foodstuffs in terms of like cheese and ultimately like cream cakes and what have you. Like you'll need more and more ingredients.
Ultimate forms of cheese and cream cakes.
Exactly.
I could just see that being appealing to people almost immediately. Anyone that's ever maxed out cooking in World of Warcraft, I think, is already just rubbing their hands with greedy glee right at this point.
Eating online, we call it.
Oh, there you go. Eating MMO, I think that'll work.
Yep. And another key feature of the game is obviously permanent death, which basically works like so that if any of these meters ever reaches 0, my character will be knocked out.
Okay.
And when he's knocked out, he is unable to move. He cannot like interact with his inventory. He cannot interact with his equipment screen or chat or do anything.
Yeah.
And if he were to receive, when he's in a knocked out state, if he were to receive further damage after that, he would perish, quite simply. He would die. The character would die, and he would be lost, and you would have to create a new character.
Right.
And the way that is kind of offset is, like, there's several offsets to that. First of all, you need skills in order to be able to attack other players.
Okay.
Bam, there, Frederick knocked me down. So I'm out cold now. And
she's vicious, what can I say?
Yeah, exactly. Lady's a tiger.
Sadistic.
And as you can see, I can't interact with my equipments anymore.
Okay.
And if you were to punch me again here, I would be dead as a doorknob, and I would have to create a new character.
He's tempted. I can see it in his eyes.
Yeah, he wants to. He wants to send me to the angels. Yeah, but he needs skills in order to do that. So there are a couple of skills that he needs to learn before he can loot me as he did now, or before he can knock me out, or before he can hurt me at all.
Okay.
And the skills that he needs to learn are, we have them over here. He needs to have the rights of Englishmen in order to be allowed to attack other pilgrims.
Right.
And he needs the story of Cain and Abel before he's allowed to murder other pilgrims, as we call players. So there's a whole series of skills that he needs to learn, and as you can see, he left a little clue here, which is what this bobbing exclamation mark
I did wonder what
represents.
those things were.
And what I can do with this is, if I can see it, which I need to have certain skills myself before I'm allowed to see them, but if I can track from them. And tracking basically gives me a little window where I can choose if I want to track the perpetrator, the claim, i.e. the homestead of the perpetrator, or the item that was stolen when this clue was left.
Okay.
So if I choose to track the perpetrator, I will get a little arrow over my own head, which points towards Frederick. So this basically means that I can use players can use these clues to track down offending players and punish them if they have engaged in criminal behavior.
Right.
Yep. And the real upside of that is that if Frederick logs out and I can't find him and he's committed a serious enough crime, I can use the clue to summon him into the game and kill him, even if he's offline.
Okay.
Which basically means that anyone who engages in criminal activity opens themselves up to retaliatory
Right, so the game is designed, it's not really about player killing. In fact, it's actually the exact opposite. It's about sort of trying to exist as a lawful society, building things. But if someone does act that way, with perma-death being such a big issue, that's really intriguing and also terrifying at the same time.
Yep. It's obviously a mechanic that we've tried it before, and Haven obviously has similar mechanics. And what we've seen there is like people, like, not that there isn't PvP because there's plenty of it, but people are oftentimes quite reluctant to just randomly attack and
it has
people.
consequences.
Yeah, exactly. At least it has potential consequences.
Interesting. So show me perhaps a little bit of this crafting that you're talking about. What kind of things can we craft?
You can, like, the game is based on, like, what we have in right now are things like axe. You can craft an axe, and for that you need a branch and a stone, and the result will be an axe.
Okay.
We have some other things like a bucket. We can clean cotton. We can make cotton cloth. We can make a planter's pouch. We can make some bread, etc.
Okay.
But the real, like, crafting itself is relatively straightforward. You basically just gather up the resources that you need and click the button, and you will get it.
No workbenches required.
Sometimes some workbenches will be required. Like if you you're working with metal, you need an anvil and stuff like that. So some things will need, backup in terms of like infrastructure, but most crafts are relatively straightforward that way.
Okay.
But the real problem is obviously getting the resources. That's where the real gist of it really lies. And a lot of the processes in the game are like extremely time sensitive and require a lot of like planning ahead. For example, growing food and growing like plants. It can take almost a week from the time that you sow them to the time that you harvest them.
Okay.
So there's a relatively long time scale to the game.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Where do you see it kind of going in the end game? Let's say that a server has been around for a few months. What do you see players doing at that point?
At that point, the game has probably turned relatively political. I think you'll have several established big villages who are, in constant, not constant warfare, but at least, in constant like political competition and struggle with each other for natural resources and for like control of the map and whatnot.
Okay.
And yeah, that would be the like high end of the game, but I think many people would just be playing casually and not really be aware of the political aspect of the game at all. I think it's a game that you could probably play extremely well as a hermit, just doing your own thing.
Sounds interesting. So is there any actual PvE aspect to this, or is it entirely player generated?
No, there is PvE in the sense that the world is obviously populated by animals of various kinds, and the lore that we've kind of gone with is heavily based on like the American Gothic tradition. Okay. So we have lots of like H.P. Lovecraft type monsters.
Oh, right, okay. And so we may see a Shoggoth at some point.
Exactly. There might be a Shoggoth in there somewhere, and we have like some Alice in Wonderland type of creatures. And one book that has been hugely like inspirational to us has been a book called The Fearsome Creatures of the Lumberwoods.
Okay.
Which is a collection of lumberjack folklore from Maine.
Right.
And it contains things like hide-behinds and squonks. And these are obviously the vicious hide-behinds. I can zoom in a bit on them. And the reason they have their names is obviously because they stalk the forest and try to hide behind people.
Yeah.
That's the Jersey Devil that Frederick spawned in there. And so we have a kind of a host of a menagerie of like Alice in Wonderland-esque creatures that kind of roam the backwoods.
Yeah, that is a very bizarre mix that you've got right there. That's actually quite nice as well. And it's nice not to just be fighting giant rats all the time.
Exactly. It's a bit fresher than your random orc, perhaps.
Yeah, no kidding.
And the way it works is that we have like, right, as you can see, this is a full day bright, light scene.
Yeah.
And what we have in game is like a civilization rating, where we measure the civilization of an area.
Okay.
As you develop it with like churches and buildings and fields and whatnot.
Yep.
And as the civilization rating increases, the brighter it gets, and the more mundane the creature spawns get as well. Like they will, like in a fully civilized area, you would see more like deers and rabbits and bears and more normal creatures.
But as you go further away from civilization, it gets more and more dangerous.
Exactly.
And one assumes there is a reason to do that. One, to forage for natural resources. Do some of these rare creatures perhaps have some kind of rare drops and things like that?
Absolutely.
Right, okay.
They all like, you want their hides for special craft purposes and
so
whatnot.
I'm getting a bit of a Terraria vibe in there as well.
Absolutely.
Interesting mix of it there. That's really intriguing. It really is. Can you show us anything about, say, constructing a building?
Yeah, absolutely. Constructing a building is very much like crafting. It's relatively... I'm walking around naked here since Frederick stole my stuff.
Yeah, I did notice this, actually.
Maybe I should put something on just for the... I have some stuff here. I'll put that on.
Sometimes you just go let the air in.
Want to be indecent here. But building is relatively straightforward. Like down here, we have what we call the StarCraft menu, which is essentially just a root menu with several sub-menus. And under that, we have build. And here we have a bunch of different build projects that we could go for, like a farmer's house, for example.
Okay.
When we click that, we get a little blueprint that we can place. Yeah. And as you can see, it now faces me. But I can also hold down Shift and rotate it by scrolling my mouse wheel and like placing it. That hide behind gets out of my way. Place it like so. The character walks up and slams down a little under construction sign.
Okay.
And basically now this little window here tells me the things I need in order to complete this project, complete this building.
Now, a lot of MMOs have been kind of scared of allowing player housing, as you're well aware, because there's limited space within the world and things like that. How do you intend to deal with, say, a situation comes up where somebody has a ton of resources and just uses all their resources to cover all useful land in useless buildings? Is that going to be community managed?
Yeah, that would probably A, be community managed, and B, I think the world is just going to be much too huge for that. I mean, like, we've run an MMO that's extremely similar, and that situation has simply never come up, and we've had quite a few players. So.
Interesting. Okay.
So I'm not really concerned about them.
I could just see torches and pitchforks coming out for someone like that.
Absolutely.
I assume there are both torches and pitchforks available in this game.
There will be both torches and pitchforks.
That's very, very important. Yeah, a couple of tables to be flipped as well would be quite nice. And I mean, obviously this does look like it's very much a work in progress. Do you have a estimated release date for this game? Or?
Yeah, we're gonna start a kind of like closed alpha within the coming months, and then after like. At the beginning of next year, we're going to start a beta that we're gradually going to open up as we feel comfortable with it and as we see it kind of moving along smoothly for eventually looking to release it sometime early next summer.
Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, there you go. Seatribe Games brings us Salem, the crafting MMO and torch and pitchfork simulator. My name has been Totalbiscuit. Thank you very much for talking to us today, and best of luck with your title.
Thank you.
Guys, I'll see you next time.
Thank you.